Hierarchy on Valith Prime is not metaphorical. It is weight. When I first entered the Imperial Palace, I thought the pressure in my skull was nerves. Then I realized the marble beneath my boots was subtly slanted, not physically, but gravitationally. Everything leaned toward the throne. "Do not resist the resonance," my diplomatic liaison murmured without looking at me. "I'm not resisting anything," I whispered back. "I'm just trying to keep my thoughts from filing a complaint." She did not smile. I suspected smiling required permission in this place. The throne rose at the far end of the chamber like an axis around which physics had signed a treaty. It was not ornate. It was precise. Bands of dark alloy curved around a core of suspended light, and beneath it I could feel something deeper, a gravitational anchor embedded into the palace's quantum foundation. Faster-than-light governance networks required stabilization. Apparently, so did authority, and seated upon it was the Empress. She did not move when I entered, yet the air rearranged itself around her. Her skin held a faint metallic luminescence that shifted with ambient gravitational flux, as though reflecting forces I could not see. Along her spine, translucent biomechanical ridges pulsed in slow intervals, feeding data into the throne's spacetime lattice. Her eyes were layered with crystalline membranes, refracting attention itself. It was difficult to look away, not because she demanded it, but because physics encouraged it. Noble houses occupied ascending tiers, each level closer to the throne corresponding with measurable neural synchronization. I had read the briefing. Hierarchical resonance fields emitted from the throne aligned augmented cognition into cooperative harmony. The higher you sat, the more aligned you became. I was seated at the lowest tier. For diplomatic symmetry, they said. The assembly began with a cascade of holographic decrees, hovering glyphs that spiraled downward from the throne in structured patterns. As each decree unfurled, I felt a faint tug at the edges of my thoughts, like static trying to become melody. "Is it always this persuasive?" I murmured. "Silence," my liaison breathed. I blinked hard. The tug receded slightly. Apparently, human neural architecture did not fully cooperate with hierarchical resonance. I felt the field, analyzed it, even admired its engineering, but my thoughts refused to line up politely. From the throne, the Empress spoke. Her voice carried layered frequencies, some audible, others felt in the bones. Governance corridors stabilized, outer sectors aligned. Each statement rippled outward, and I watched nobles straighten almost imperceptibly, their neural implants adjusting to the cadence of command. I leaned toward my liaison again. "So this is less monarchy and more astrophysics." She closed her eyes briefly. "You were instructed not to comment." "I whisper when nervous," I said. "Do not be nervous." That advice lacks implementation steps. The pressure intensified briefly, as though the palace itself disapproved of my tone. Then something unexpected happened. Mid-decree, the Empress's gaze shifted, not across the chamber, not toward the nobles. Toward me, I felt it immediately, not scrutiny, calibration. The tug at my thoughts strengthened, then faltered. Her crystalline eyes narrowed by a fraction. The resonance field around my tier fluctuated. I remained myself. I swallowed. "Is she supposed to look directly at the statistical insignificance section?" I whispered. My liaison did not answer. The holographic decrees froze midair. The palace AI paused its predictive modeling. I could feel it, like a system holding its breath. The Empress rose. When she stood, the throne's gravitational anchor flickered. A ripple traveled through the chamber floor. Noble neural transmissions stuttered in synchronized confusion. Authority, which had always flowed downward, hesitated. She descended the steps slowly, biomechanical ridges along her spine, adjusting in real time to compensate for the throne's vacancy. Each step redistributed the resonance field, flattening it by incremental degrees. The pressure in my skull lessened. I blinked. "That seems significant," I muttered. She crossed the chamber without hurry, the air bending gently around her as if reconsidering its loyalties. Then she did something that violated every briefing I had memorized. She sat beside me, not above, not elevated, beside. The silence that followed was not dramatic, it was mathematical. Biomechanical sentinels froze mid-pivot. Noble houses ceased neural transmission mid-thought. The palace AI suspended its predictive cascade entirely. The resonance field around us equalized. I felt no tug. I looked at her cautiously. "Your Majesty," I whispered, because apparently I could not stop doing that, "is this symbolic?" She turned her head slightly and the gravitational gradient shifted with the movement. "No," she said quietly, "it is structural." The palace remained silent, and for the first time since I had entered, the air did not lean. Silence on Valith Prime is rarely empty. It is usually full of agreement. This silence was different. The Empress remained seated beside me, not touching, not looming, simply occupying the same horizontal plane. The gravitational field that had once pulled thought downward into obedience now felt evenly distributed, like a table finally leveled after centuries of tilt. Across the chamber, noble houses sat frozen. Their neural implants flickered faintly, attempting to recalibrate against a resonance map that no longer matched protocol. The palace AI projected a faint shimmer above the abandoned throne, as if unsure whether to continue the decree cascade or file a complaint. "Dimensional coherence variance detected," the AI announced softly. "That sounds expensive," I muttered. The Empress did not look at me immediately. Her gaze remained forward, but the subtle biomechanical ridges along her spine adjusted in rhythmic pulses, compensating for the throne's vacancy. "Variance is information," she said. "On Earth, variance is usually paperwork," I replied. Her crystalline eyes turned toward me again. The pressure in my thoughts remained neutral. I felt uncompressed. Across the chamber, one of the high nobles attempted to project a directive. His voice carried its usual harmonic authority, amplified by decades of synchronized reinforcement. It landed with a dull thud. No cascade. No downward ripple. He tried again, louder. Nothing. The palace AI recalculated, then paused again. "Hierarchical amplification channel inactive," it reported. "Is that bad?" I whispered. "It is unprecedented," the Empress replied. The nobles began transmitting silently across their neural network. I could not hear the content, but I could sense the agitation. A faint electromagnetic hum building beneath the polished calm of the assembly. "You are destabilizing your own authority," I said carefully. "Yes." "Is that a strategy or a mood?" She tilted her head slightly, and I felt the gravitational gradient shift a fraction closer to equilibrium. "Your species demonstrates resistance to hierarchical resonance," she said. "You experience pressure without alignment." "That explains faculty meetings," I said. She ignored the reference. "For generations, we have assumed elevation is necessary for coherence," she continued. "Above ensures stability below. And you're testing whether beside does the same thing," I said. Her filaments, fine luminous strands cascading from her crown, shifted hue almost imperceptibly. "Yes." A biomechanical sentinel took a tentative step forward, perhaps to suggest protocol restoration. Its internal gyroscopes misaligned by a millimeter, recalibrating to the flattened field. Sentinel locomotion efficiency decreased by 0.4%, the AI observed. "See," I murmured, "even your robots are confused." "They are not robots," she corrected calmly. "Apologies, biomechanical expressions of vertical loyalty." A pause. Then faintly, one of the luminous ridges along her spine pulsed in a pattern I could only interpret as amusement. Across the chamber, a lower-tier noble, previously too distant to project meaningful influence, cleared her throat and spoke. Her voice lacked the amplified harmonic resonance of upper tiers, yet it carried cleanly across the space. "We await instruction." The words were simple. They did not cascade. They did not bend probability. They were received. The Empress did not stand. She answered from beside me. "Instruction is unchanged," she said. Authority remains. The nobles waited. Position does not define it, she added. The palace AI hesitated before reactivating partial predictive modeling. It projected a faint lattice across the chamber, attempting to measure whether stability could be maintained without strict vertical amplification. Probability of systemic collapse, 1%, it reported. That's lower than most diplomatic exchanges, I whispered. She glanced at me briefly. Your species tolerates higher variance thresholds. We call it democracy, I said. That is inefficient. Extremely. A noble in the upper tier attempted once more to project command. This time, instead of forcing amplification, he simply spoke. Proceed with trade corridor recalibration. The words traveled without gravitational boost. They were not heavier than the lower-tier noble's voice. They were simply words. The recalibration sequence began. The palace did not fracture. The gravitational anchor beneath the throne emitted a low hum as it redistributed resonance horizontally rather than vertically. I could feel the physics adapting. Less spike, more spread. You're rewriting your empire's operating system, I said quietly. No, she replied. I am revealing its underlying code. And that code says what? That power can exist without altitude. The silence in the chamber softened, not with noise but with recalculation. Neural implants across the tiers adjusted to a flatter resonance field. The palace AI integrated new parameters for authority projection. No rebellion erupted. No collapse followed, just balance. I exhaled slowly. You realize this is going to give your historians a migraine. Historians adapt, she said. So do empires. She looked forward again, posture steady, no longer elevated but undeniably present. Yes, she said, if they choose to sit beside what they once stood above. The chamber began to breathe again, not downward, outward. The next assembly did not begin with elevation. It began with hesitation. The throne still occupied its place at the far end of the chamber, gravitational anchor humming softly, ready to resume its familiar dominance. Noble houses filled their tiers as before, neural implants aligned in disciplined anticipation. The palace AI projected a faint probability lattice across the air, calculating whether the previous session's anomaly had been a controlled deviation or the beginning of structural drift. I remained in the lowest tier, hands folded, determined to blink responsibly. The Empress entered. She paused at the base of the throne steps. That alone caused a measurable fluctuation. Authority resonance awaiting occupation, the AI announced politely. She did not sit. Instead, she turned to face the chamber. Proceed, she said. Without the throne's gravitational spike, the chamber's resonance remained level. Nobles glanced at one another, their neural links attempting to determine who would initiate discourse without amplified hierarchy. A senior House representative cleared his throat. Outer sector tariffs require recalibration, he began. His voice did not cascade. It carried because the room allowed it to. I leaned slightly toward my liaison. This feels like a committee meeting, I whispered. It feels unstable, she replied. The Empress remained standing, not elevated, not seated beside me, simply present. Her biomechanical ridges adjusted subtly, feeding compensatory data into the anchor without activating vertical dominance. The gravitational field was not flat, it was shared. A lower-tier noble spoke next. Trade recalibration must consider autonomous colony petitions. There was a pause. In previous sessions, that statement would have required endorsement from above to carry weight. Now it hovered in the air, equal to the first. The palace AI recalculated. Amplification hierarchy inactive, it reported. Deliberative parity detected. That sounds healthy, I murmured. Health is not a governance metric, my liaison replied. It should be. Across the chamber, debate unfolded. Voices overlapped slightly, uncertain of pacing without the throne's regulating pulse. A few nobles attempted to project traditional command tones, only to find them absorbed into the shared field without special gravity. The Empress observed quietly. Her crystalline eyes tracked the chamber not as a ruler surveying subordinates, but as a physicist watching an experiment stabilize. One of the biomechanical sentinels approached her cautiously. "Stability remains within acceptable variance," it reported. "Define acceptable," she said. "Probability of rebellion remains below 1-3%. "Acceptable," she agreed. I shifted in my seat. "You realize," I said softly, "that you're conducting a live civilization-scale trial." "Yes." "No pressure. Pressure is distributed." A noble from an upper tier attempted to stand, perhaps intending to reassert dominance through physical posture. The gravitational anchor did not respond. His elevation achieved nothing beyond improved visibility. He sat back down. I couldn't help it, I smiled. The Empress noticed. "Amusement detected," she said quietly. "On my planet we call this progress," I replied. "On mine we call it recalibration." The debate in the chamber grew more fluid. Without amplified directives, participants listened longer before responding. Neural transmission slowed slightly, no longer compelled into instant synchronization. The Palace AI adjusted its predictive models. "Cognitive independence variables increasing," it reported. "Error?" a noble asked sharply. "Not error," the Empress said before the AI could respond. "Expansion." A faint ripple passed through the chamber. Uncertainty, curiosity, something not previously dominant in imperial discourse. For a moment no one spoke. Then a voice from the lowest tier, someone I had barely noticed before, offered a proposal for corridor optimization based on regional data rather than central decree. The suggestion was debated, not dismissed, not absorbed, debated. The gravitational anchor beneath the throne emitted a low, steady hum, no longer spiking vertically but stabilizing horizontally across the chamber's plane. I felt it physically, a balanced pull, not a downward tug. "You've changed the physics," I said. "No," she replied. "I allowed the physics to change us." The assembly continued without collapse. No riot, no implosion, just conversation. As the session concluded, the Empress finally ascended the steps toward the throne. The chamber tensed. She placed her hand upon the anchor's control interface. For a heartbeat, the old gravitational spike threatened to reassert itself. Then it softened. When she sat, the throne did not tower over the chamber with oppressive force. It hummed, present, stabilizing but not overwhelming. Authority remained. It simply no longer required altitude. I exhaled slowly. "You've just redefined power," I said. She looked down at me from the throne, not distant, not diminished. "Power was never elevation," she said. "It was alignment." The chamber did not fall silent this time. It murmured. And the murmur sounded remarkably like choice. The final recalibration did not happen during ceremony. It happened during routine. Weeks after the Empress first left her throne, the empire no longer trembled at the absence of vertical gravity. Trade corridors functioned. Outer sectors transmitted without amplified command tones. The Palace AI had rewritten entire layers of predictive modeling to account for cognitive independence as a stable variable rather than a disruptive anomaly. And yet tension lingered, not rebellion but uncertainty. I stood once more in the assembly chamber, no longer merely an observer. My role had shifted quietly. Nobles now asked me questions about human governance structures. I had become, disturbingly, a consultant. "You normalize variance," one noble said during a recess. "We survive it," I corrected. The Empress entered without dramatic gravitational adjustment. The throne's anchor responded to her presence, but not with dominance, more like recognition. The chamber did not tilt. She remained standing. "Report," she said. The Palace AI projected its findings. "Hierarchical resonance no longer requires altitude differential. Authority field stabilized at distributed amplitude. Civic unrest probability reduced to 0. 6%. "That's lower than your initial anxiety," I whispered to my liaison. She did not shush me this time. A senior noble stepped forward. Your Majesty, the throne's gravitational anchor has adapted to horizontal resonance parameters. Elevation is no longer structurally necessary. The words carried without amplification. They were simply heard. The Empress descended the steps, not dramatically, not symbolically, but practically, and walked toward the center of the chamber. She gestured toward the throne. "Deactivate vertical bias," she commanded. The anchor hummed. For a moment the chamber felt weightless, not physically but hierarchically. No upward pull, no downward cascade, just equilibrium. The nobles shifted uneasily. "You are removing the throne's primary function," one said carefully. "No," she replied, "I am refining it." She turned to me. "You have observed our transition." "Observed is generous," I said. I mostly blinked and tried not to offend physics. "You resisted alignment." "Accidentally." Resistance revealed flexibility. I considered that. "When I arrived," I said slowly, "I thought power was about volume, projection, dominance. And now," she asked, "now I think it's about whether people still think when you're in the room." A faint ripple moved through the chamber, not discomfort, but contemplation. The palace AI recalculated once more. "Authority coherence maintained without vertical enforcement," it announced. "Then the throne remains," she said, "but as stabilizer, not pedestal." She approached the throne one final time. This time she did not ascend fully. Instead, she adjusted its gravitational anchor settings manually, lowering its baseline influence. The throne's field expanded outward, distributing stabilization evenly across the chamber rather than concentrating it at a single elevated point. The nobles felt it instantly. No compression, no submission reflex, just clarity. A lower-tier representative spoke. "We remain loyal." The word did not bend gravity. It did not require amplification. It simply existed. The Empress nodded. "Loyalty without coercion," she said, "is stronger." The chamber did not fall into stunned silence. It began to converse, not chaotically, not rebelliously, deliberately. As the assembly transitioned into open discourse, I felt something unfamiliar within myself. Confidence. When I first entered this palace, I had measured my words carefully, aware that authority here functioned like astrophysics. Now I spoke without whispering. "You've changed your empire," I said to her quietly. "We have changed," she corrected. "That's larger." "Yes." I glanced around the chamber. Nobles of varying tiers stood at the same physical level, discussing corridor logistics, trade ethics, planetary autonomy. The palace AI no longer dominated conversation with predictive overlays. It assisted. "You realize historians will argue about this for centuries," I said. "Historians require material," she replied, "and you've given them a thesis." She looked at me, not from above, not from beside, but across. "You believe humanity is insignificant," she said. "I try not to," I answered. "Your cognitive independence has altered imperial structure." "That sounds like an overstatement." "It is accurate." I exhaled softly. "Then maybe insignificance is relative." The throne hummed quietly behind her, not as a symbol of supremacy but as a stabilizing presence within a now horizontal chamber. The empire did not collapse. It did not weaken. It adapted. As the session concluded, nobles departed not in synchronized silence but in thoughtful murmur. The palace AI dimmed its projections, no longer anticipating every word before it was spoken. The Empress remained in the center of the chamber, not elevated, not diminished, aligned. I realized something as I